We tend to celebrate success loudly, the growth, the exits, the numbers, the wins, but we rarely talk about what success quietly takes from us along the way. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. My guest today knows that tension firsthand. Chaz Wolfe is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and founder of Gathering the Kings. On paper, his story looks like what many entrepreneurs chase. Businesses built and scaled, financial milestones reached, momentum achieved early. But as Chaz will tell you, success nearly came at the expense of everything that actually mattered. In this conversation, we go beyond the highlight reel. We talk about the hidden costs of winning, the moment when achievements stop feeling like fulfillment, and what it really means to redefine that entrepreneurial win once you realize money alone is not the answer. If you're building something and quietly wondering, what is it costing you? This episode is for you. My conversation with Chaz Wolfe begins right now. Stick around. Chaz Wolfe, thanks for being my guest today. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me here on the show. I appreciate that. It's going to be an incredible conversation. Let's get rolling.
Let's get rolling. So let's start rolling from the beginning. What pulled you into entrepreneurship, and what problem, if any, originally back in those days, were you trying to solve for yourself or the industry or whatever? What pushed you off that cliff?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever had a cliff, to be honest with you, Mike. I grew up single mom family, so we just didn't have anything. My mom worked multiple jobs and hustled and proved to me that work ethic and stick-to-itiveness and no excuses was going to get me pretty far. And so I went behind that and had multiple jobs and was learning sales and all kinds of fun stuff. But by the time I became an entrepreneur at 24, leaving a corporate job, I'm not college educated, so I was leaving a very highly paid corporate job for quote unquote not being educated. And I couldn't get out of there fast enough. So I don't know if it was much of a jump as much of it was excitement and just enthusiasm for what life had for me. I knew that building my own thing was what I was designed for. I didn't know what that really meant, but I was just excited for the next steps. And I very excitedly jumped off the cliff, if you will. In fact, one of my last conversations before I jumped off that cliff was with a good buddy of mine. And I bought into a franchise called Edible Arrangements. This was back when I was 24. And so I'm leaving my corporate job and I'm having this conversation with him.
Is that the flower type, like a bouquet of fruit?
Yep.
Is it? Yes.
Yep, exactly. Yep. We do much more than that now, but it's a unique gift franchise. And so I'm talking to my buddy about it, and he's like, well, what if people stop buying fruit? And I was like, well, I guess I would go back into sales. I'd pay off the loan that I'm about to get. And then I looked at him with that crazy eye and said, I'd do it again.
And I'd do it all over again. You said something that resonated with me, that you didn't go to college. I went to college for 6 weeks and dropped out.
Wow.
Right?
There you go.
But I'm not even cool enough. Like so many famous entrepreneurs dropped out of college. Steve Jobs, dropped out.
Oh, yeah.
But he dropped out of Stanford, right? Yeah. I dropped out of a 2-year community college. So I didn't. Yeah. I don't even have that cool story to tell. But you did if you're like me, and pretty much any other entrepreneur, you did sign up for an education. It's the college of life type thing. But I think that my journey, 34 years now and counting with my business, is more like a curriculum. It's a university campus. It's a PhD course in business and entrepreneurship and life, for that matter. But it doesn't have a brick and mortar campus. It doesn't have fraternities and sorority girls. It doesn't have any of that, and you never graduate. It's just perpetual learning. But there are 2 ways to get that education, and one is, I call it fast track. 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, whatever, and then you get into business and you realize you have to relearn everything anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Was there ever a moment of doubt when you started your business at 24?
Yeah, not one. No, I'm just kidding.
Not one. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me on today's episode of The Reluctant Entrepreneur. How did you persevere through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think being 24, there was a mixture, right, of like, piss and vinegar, as they say, of just, I'm going to take on the world. I have no clue. It's the uninformed optimism that they call it. And then what happens after that? What's the next stage? Informed pessimism. And so I think in those stages, where, whether I'd made a mistake or whether I was, kind of grinding through a season, if you will, I doubted myself a lot. In fact, when I started my podcast in 2022, I told my guests the only purpose that I had was to tell their story, yes, but I wanted to transfer, because I think that as an entrepreneur, we all experience doubt. We're reluctant, we're unsure, and that's the game, is getting clear and gaining competence, which can lead to more confidence. But a lot of times it's just hearing a story like this one from great hosts like you that just transfer courage. That's all it really is. Is like, if he can do it, I can do it. Because look, I'm telling you right now, maybe I got a cool looking beard, but like, if I can do it, you can do it. And I think that's the message, really. Yes,
and
I've
I'm able
myself.
to do it without the cool looking beard. So it's possible for both sides. So I'm wondering if you share the same perspective now that you have some altitude and some runway behind you. The so-called, I won't even call them skills, the attributes I brought to the table when I started my business 34 years ago was arrogance, naivety, ego, lots of passion, and probably above all, a very poor assessment of risk. And I think I would be insincere if I say I don't recommend that. For me, I don't think I could have started my business without that. Ignorance is bliss. 80% of all, statistically, 80% of all businesses ultimately fail. And only 20% survive statistically, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And if I had known that and believed that, I don't know. I might have hit my first wall and went, oh yeah, that's me. I'm in the 80, I'm in the 80%.
Yep.
I think the naivety and the ignorance allows us to think we can do things that are statistically not likely to succeed. Do you look back and, although I'm sure you're much wiser now and you're less, naive and ignorant and arrogant and all that now, but do you look back in retrospect and become grateful for that level of, clean slate, anything's possible, naivety?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, grateful, yes, is a great word to say. We have a phrase inside of our community, grateful but not done. And that place to be able to look back and go, whoa, that's where we came from. How did we make it? And being so grateful for the opportunities, the losses, the wins, the whole thing. And then going, but like we still got up the mountain to go. Still a long ways to go before the potential is achieved. I think it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, as I look back, to those moments or to the, I don't know, mistakes, as you say, or the reluctancies, it's like, I'm 24 years old. I'm getting an SBA loan. I've never gotten an SBA loan before. The guy that I was working with was helping me. I've never owned a business before. Statistically speaking, me at 24 getting an SBA loan for almost $500,000 is like just not going to happen. And I make it happen. And 6 months later, statistically speaking, banks don't give you another loan until, they've seen your progress, maybe a year or two, maybe at the earliest. And 6 months later, I was able to buy another one. And a year later, I bought another one. And a year later, I bought 3 new ones.
Wow.
And so seven businesses, 7 locations in 4 years. And the little snapshot that I just gave to you was like, oh, well, you just got like a really great bank that believed in you or something, or maybe they were just handing out free money. I don't know. But the truth is behind that story that I just told is I got my first 1, 2, and 3 from bank number 1. And then they said to me, actually, you know what, Chaz, you're moving kind of fast. And now we're reluctant. And I don't know, we just want to watch it for a while. And I said, okay, cool, sounds good. And so I went with Bank B for number 4. And bank number 4 didn't want to give me 5, 6, and 7. So I found Bank C, who did 5 and 6 and didn't want to do 7. So I had to find Bank D, who, so my point being here is that along the way, there's always going to be the roadblocks or the opportunities to quit or the things that maybe take us out. And yeah, the naivete was fantastic because all it did for me was it allowed me to keep searching for the answer or the result that I was actually looking for. And I think that's actually why the 80% actually happens, is because they're not resourceful enough. Sure, that might end up being like literal resources, like they ran out of money, which is part of that stat that you read. But I think in the individual, they ran out of like gumption or umph to find a new solution. Yeah. And if everything is figure outable, then I just got to keep, if I've hit a brick wall per se, and I just keep tapping on the bricks to see which one's loose or see how I can get over it or around it or dig underneath it. Like, it's just a matter of time before I find the solution.
Was edible arrangements when you bought your first store, were they a little hesitant? Did they look at you and go, get out of here, kid. Come back when you're 40 or something. Was that
right?
An extra, couple feet in the brick wall that you had to scale? Or did they say, were they the type of franchisor that just said, hey, you got the money? Fine. I would think that that's not how they operate. I would think that not only do they want to sell you a store, they would like it to be successful over time, right?
Right. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, on paper, I looked pretty good. Yes, I was 24, but I looked pretty good from, money and then experience, even in the corporate space. And then once they met me, it was kind of, check. And I hold myself, pretty well. But the landlord of that first store had not met me.
Right.
And they didn't like the idea of me being 24 years old and having a $5,000 a month rent, triple net lease. And in fact, they talked with the guy that was selling it to me, and his response to them was, "Have you met him?" Because I think once you meet him, you'll realize one, it's the same business that I currently pay the rent with, so why wouldn't he be able to pay? But then number two, I think all your worries about him being 24 will go away once you meet him. So I think that's there's a little lesson in there, which I'm trying to teach my kids now, of some of the basics of how to hold yourself, how to have eye contact, how to have a firm handshake, how to be able to communicate clearly and properly and with authority. And it doesn't matter how old you are. I've managed people older than me all of my life. And so the age really has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with your confidence and your ability to see what you want and then take the right action to go get it.
There are people at 3 times your age that can't deliver confidence when they enter a room, right? That is something that is, I'm sure a lot of it can be taught. Whatever level of you have naturally can be expanded on, but I think there is there's a seed in there somewhere that makes it possible to expand that. And we all know it. We all know when that one person comes into a room and all heads turn that way. And then all of a sudden, no one's looking at you anymore. They just kind of command the authority, the respect, the street cred just travels with them like an aura, right? We all know those people, and I think that really is helpful in the entrepreneurship world. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, the fact that they think they can do something that statistically they shouldn't be able to do, and go against the odds and kind of break the rules a little bit and draw outside the lines, it's pretty typical for an entrepreneur. I think that level of being able to command a room and get credibility is just part of the entrepreneurial wiring diagram, right? Not always, but frequently anyway.
Yeah, and Napoleon Hill wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. It's the #1 book on success, written over 100 years ago, and he calls it a pleasing personality. And to be magnetic is really just to operate at a frequency that is enthusiastic, that draws people in. And so, sure, some of that's personality, and I've had to learn how to be extroverted in some circumstances where maybe I want to shy back and observe. But some of it is also just being an amazing person, like loving yourself well enough and showing up in a way that's just helpful to others and pleasing. It sounds like it's old language to have a pleasing personality, but it just means to impact people in a way to where like, man, that was different. That was unique. I enjoyed that. That was a cool guy. I want more of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. As your business, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. You did something with the franchise that most franchisees don't do, and that is you didn't buy one store and buy yourself a job, right?
Right.
You scaled it. I have a really close friend of mine who invested in the Nothing Bundt Cake
Oh,
franchise.
sure.
And she bought one store. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I expressed it to her. Maybe I'm not that good of a friend. But I remember thinking that I hope this works out because my opinion of those single stores, if someone buys a Subway, for example, is you kind of bought yourself a job. But she had grander plans. She built it up to 7 stores. And she recently just sold 5 of them. And shared with me, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, you had a game plan the whole time. And she made a habit. At first, she worked in her business, obviously, but then she transitioned to work on her business, and she built an empire, a little bakery empire. And it sounds like that's what you did as well. You turned a single store into, I think you said 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
7 stores.
Did you exit out of that, or do you still have them?
Yeah, I've exited all but one. I still have one down in Florida. That's super cool. I was just there for Valentine's Day a couple days ago. And the beauty there, which I'm sure will be for your friend as well, is that, it was never my anticipation. I don't even really eat fruit, which is kind of weird. And I don't eat sugar. So, I don't eat like our chocolate and cheesecakes and stuff like that. And so it's kind of odd that I would own this fruit and treats business. But for me, it's never been about, like you're saying, like that individual shop, leaving my corporate job to then like go make baskets. I have made all of the baskets. I know how to make the treats. I've done thousands of deliveries. I've worked in the shop, but my concept of business ownership was, I didn't know it at the time, being 24, 25, was to scale, was to grow, was to move on to the next level. I've been able to carry that since exiting those, and I've got other companies now in real estate and construction, and obviously Gathering the Kings, which is my main focus now, is a coaching business for family-driven entrepreneurs. This is what I help them do now. It's like, how do you build a business that runs without you so your family never has to? And that's what I was doing at 24, 25, even though there was a period of time, which I'm sure we'll get to, where I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to do business and family well, which is ultimately ended up why I do what I do now. But I was in the process of scaling, with creating systems and process and people, all the things that eventually are needed to make sure that your family doesn't get your leftovers and they get the best of you. And so, you can't have a job. You can't have a business that's a job and still be able to show up as your best self for your family. I think it's the same as just having a job, so that's not really entrepreneurship.
So Chaz, as your business began to grow, were there any early signs that this is going to be successful? And well, obviously there were, because you wouldn't have, if you thought otherwise, you wouldn't have bought number 2, number 3, number 4, all the way to 7. But what were those early signs? How long did they take before you really had enough confidence to say, okay, I'm going to scale this baby?
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to give you a different perspective here. Yes, there was successful things happening. There's a difference between starting a business and purchasing an existing business. And so as I was purchasing, my first location, it was really comparison to like what had been done before, and how I was managing things. And what the success tactic was in my mind of why I wanted number 2 and up to 7 was, okay, I can see how this little thing can be automated, or this little machine can work, while then I go get another one and another one and another one and another one. So the success wasn't necessarily like the sales, although that's what the bank liked. It wasn't the operation around the holiday, because Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas are just like wild times, and creating some like really duplicatable process that allowed us to take on more orders really helped me quote unquote win. But it was really the ability for me to see like, interesting. Over the next few years, if I were to build out Kansas City, and I could expand there, and then another one pops up in another state where I could, it started to become like a reality to have not just this one little bitty shop of why I left my my corporate job, but I could expand this and I could be a real investor, entrepreneur, not just a local mom and pop. That was the success for me.
That's great. Was there a specific moment when you realized that achievement and fulfillment were no longer the same thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that for me, being family driven, and I work with family driven entrepreneurs now, I always said I was never a terrible husband or a terrible dad, but I always said that I was building my businesses for my family. But when you looked at the daily or weekly or monthly balance sheet, they got what was left over. So the business always got what was first, and then whatever left over is what the family got. And the moment that you're referencing that kind of changed my perspective to fulfillment rather than just achievement, because I was getting the awards, from the franchise system. I was getting local awards in Kansas City. I was getting, national awards. I had like people cheering everywhere. It seemed like I was kind of the golden boy. But at home, my wife was like, man, I feel like a single mom, and she has pictures, family pictures that she had taken with our kids that we had at that time, because we've got more now, but of just her and the kids. I'm not in the picture. And believe it or not, actually, it wasn't even that moment. That is the moment that helped me, but it wasn't until a little bit later when I saw the picture and kind of like put two and two together. Because even in the moment that happened, it was like, well, I'm over here doing this thing with the business, and yeah, sure, like go get the pictures. Just, I can't be there. It is what it is. And so when I saw it years later, not even years later, but a while later, it was like, oh no, what are we doing here? And I'm building this for them, but it's literally keeping me from them. Interesting. I need to do things differently. And so the fulfillment of, I still want to win in business because that's who I'm called to. I'm a builder. I'm a creator. I'm a designer. Like, this is how God made me. And so cool, but like, what does that look like for my family also? And I'm building my children. I'm building my marriage. I'm creating and designing my legacy. Like, those things still matter. I just wasn't seeing them in the way that like hit the dopamine the same way the business did. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely. So many entrepreneurs push through warning signs because momentum feels very hard to stop. What kept you pushing longer than you probably should have? I'm sure you had the warning signs, right? Looking at pictures that you were noticeably absent from, as one of them maybe. I'm sure you didn't like see the first picture and go, okay, whoa, right? It probably took a little bit of time. Were there other warning signs and that you just kind of pushed through thinking, well, that'll just work itself out? Or was it the moment you saw you missing from a picture, was that it? Did you instantly just embrace change?
No, there was lots of other warning signs as we all have them for sure. The irony of owning a gift business is that, like I said, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, like these are big times. And so we're servicing thousands of customers. And for years, probably maybe not the first 10 years. So we didn't have kids for the first 4 or 5. So I went all out on, Valentine's Day and birthdays for my wife. And then boom, literally the year I became a business owner, which ironically was in the gift industry, I stopped getting gifts. And so I was busy on those days, right? And she understood, and she never made it a big deal. But, years and years and years of no acknowledgement or appreciation or affection through gifts or just intentional notes even on Mother's Day or Valentine's Day or birthdays kind of added up over time, and I didn't see those things happening in real time. It was later when it was like, hey, so this doesn't feel the greatest to have been, this long and you seemingly don't care. It's like, shoot, bummer. That's not what I was trying to say. In fact, what I was saying was that I care so much that I'm willing to sacrifice and work.
Right.
But I was literally sacrificing the thing that I said I loved most. So it's like, wait a second, I got to.
And you sacrifice them. You put the sacrifice on them too, because as much as you didn't see them, they didn't see you, right? And there's a somewhat of a twisted irony there, because you made so many other, countless number of families and girlfriends and boyfriends and spouses happy. Through your effort, they look really good, and you're paying the price for that, right? But it's the
Couldn't
whole
even
thing.
send a
Like the
basket.
cobbler's kids have no shoes. The roofer's house leaks, and the
Yep.
gift giver doesn't give to
Forgets
his
to
own
give
family.
gifts.
Yeah. There's an irony there. You talk a lot about alignment between business, family, and personal leadership. What did you have to change at first to begin restoring that alignment?
Yeah, it was my limiting belief, which I think most entrepreneurs have, that we can't have it all. We can't have the successful business and the successful family. That I have to sacrifice, and so I'm willing to sacrifice because 85% of wealth is first generation. So here as an entrepreneur, I'm paving a new way. I'm building legacy. I want to give my kids a life I never had. Whatever the phrases that we use as entrepreneurs. And really what we're saying is that we're willing to sacrifice what we don't think we can have for the things that we can have. And so I can create a life for my kids that I never had, but what it's going to take is me working and not giving them me. But that's limiting belief. That is not true. And so what I had to first believe is that I could have it all. And what that meant actually wasn't necessarily me spending more time with my wife or kids, although yes, time is part of that. The word is intentionality. So just like I just mentioned a few minutes ago where I wasn't giving gifts, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about sending a specific, edible arrangements or flowers or anything like that. It was about intentionality. What I could have done is before I, got really busy with the holiday, I could have just written a little note, even a little post-it that just says, Happy Valentine's Day, babe. I love you with all my heart, and I'm sorry I won't be here for the holiday, but man, I'm thinking about you all day, every day. Can't wait to see you. Right? Stuck it on her mirror and then flown out to one of my stores. And that intentionality with the wife, with the family, with the kids, with your health, with your faith, that's the word. And so if you one, believe that you can have it all, if you will, but two, the way that you get that is not through necessarily spreading yourself thin and applying 100% of everything to everything all at the same time. It's just simply intentionality. Say what you want, define what you want, and then do the things intentionally each day that get you there. That's it.
Sounds simple, right?
Sounds really simple.
Yeah.
And it actually is. It's just, it's commitment, discipline, persistence
Sure.
to do what you said you wanted to do every single day. That's all.
What role did systems, delegation, or boundaries play in preventing the business from ultimately owning you?
Yeah. I mean, I think of immediately systems of, like process systems, production or how the service is done or how the product is made. But then I think of the people that run those systems. And those are kind of two different elements that we talk a lot about with our clients in order to have, real freedom. But I started that, really early on. I wanted things to be efficient and smooth. I wanted their jobs to be easier. And so I was constantly trying to iterate and optimize process. And then, of course, I was not new to leading people and having a team. And so I was aware of like how to hire and bring in people. But as I've grown in my journey, the precision of being able to locate and hire a right person and put them in the right seat, doing the right things for that individual person and for the business has only become more and more a skilled thing that I know not only how to do for myself, but now I teach others how to do as well. So it's those two things that I think work together. It's the actual system, but then the people that run the system that can give you freedom or the things that you want to do.
So a little later on, I'm going to ask you, the standard question, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs or your younger self or whatever? But I'm going to ask a slightly different question first. What advice would your wife or kids give to someone who's starting a business?
Yeah. I think that they would say that the life that you can create is amazing and that you don't have to let the things that you love now go in order to have it. It's not an exchange. My wife would say that there's going to be a building season. And just because you start a business or even buy a business doesn't mean that there's not going to be a season where maybe you're, highly focused on these actions. And, my time or capacity is fragmented. And I think that communication and being one and on the same page with your family and your spouse is she would say that that's really important. We did that well through the years. But it doesn't have to go away completely. The intentionality can still be there, and you can like really press on those little things that matter well. That's what I didn't do well early.
Yeah. When I started my business, and I think this is probably true with you and pretty much any entrepreneur, is, people talk about work-life balance, and they're like, oh yeah, you've never done this. Come on. But it's not, you don't start out of the gate 50-50 work and life.
No.
It's like 99-1, right? And that's okay, because ultimately, you got to put starter fluid down the carburetor, right? You just got to go,
right.
All out. I think the mistake people make is that level of intensity, that level of disproportionate work life gets the business started. Therefore, they think it's part of the secret sauce to keeping it going. And it's scary because, you have a formula. It's working.
Right.
Your business is growing. It's scaling. And you just want to keep that up. And something you said resonated with me too. It's like, and I think, well, this is my way of showing love and support to my family and my kids and, all the people who depend on me. Because you're also showing that effort's also landing on your employees. And, they have kids and families and car payments and mortgages and braces and, schooling and all that. So, but, this is 34 years later, so there's a lot of perspective then. But now I look at it as, what's the reason I started the business? It was to provide my family with, a certain lifestyle. And that lifestyle without me
isn't much of a lifestyle.
It takes away that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I might as well just be like sending checks to a random person and without the benefit of me. Tell me about Gathering the Kings. What's that all about?
Yeah, Gathering the Kings. We have a mission to help family-driven entrepreneurs build businesses that run without them so their families never have to. And I get to do that. I get the pleasure and the joy of working with entrepreneurs. And when I say family-driven, these are people that are down to earth. They're humble. They're hardworking. They're the salt of the earth Americans who just want better for their family. Probably didn't come from much because, again, I already gave you the stat, 85% of wealth is first generation. And they're just doing the best that they can. They love their family, and they want the next generation and 2 and 3 to just have a leg up. And they're willing to sacrifice themselves or whatever to get there. And they've most likely sacrificed some time with their family, like we've been talking about. But they don't like that. And so by giving, we have a community, a peer group, mastermind, and we also offer one-on-one coaching. But either way, we're trying to take people through a process of thinking different to get better results. So you, as an owner, you have to think different. What got you here won't get you there, type of a thing. We then have to get the right people in the right seats. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. We have to get the owner out of the weeds. In order to do that, you've got to get right people in right seats. Number 3, we've got to systemize the business. We've got to optimize, put things in process, document it, to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then we've got to have purpose inside the profit. We can't just be making money for no reason, no apparent reason. It's got to be purposeful. And as family-driven entrepreneurs, it's always purposeful. Mm-hmm. It's like you said, it's for our family and legacy, and it's for our people's family and their legacy. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of working with family-driven entrepreneurs because they're community builders. Gathering the kings and queens too, but kings aren't just ones that have selfish ambition. These are ones that rule across and go, let me make good decisions that impact lots of people. And yeah, my family is a big part of that, but also my team and then their families and the community that is touched by every single one of the people I just mentioned. And I remember being on a podcast, this was probably 3 or so years ago, and this guy was kind of doing some math with him as far as how many employees he had, how many customers they touch each year. And pretty quickly we got to about 50,000 people in his town that benefited because of him. And so I think that's pretty powerful when you think about kings and how we take care of our kingdoms, if you will. So
you had mentioned kings and queens. So my original question was going to be, is this a group of men, business owners? I took that from the word kings. Do you have, is it the people who are attracted to this philosophy of business coaching and building a
Right.
business. Is it mostly men, or do you have women involved in the gathering of
Yeah.
kings/queens?
Yeah, and it's funny. No, we do have some queens, that's for sure. And the dynamic remains the same. Whether male or female, this is a down-to-earth, family-driven. It just happens to be that she's the entrepreneur, or maybe they're both entrepreneurs. He's got his business, she's got her business, or maybe they're in the business together. We do this mastermind event. It's a vacation, actually, that we do in the summer. It's called the Family Mastermind. And this is for the entrepreneur, the spouse, the kids. And we really take this family thing seriously. This is not just, hey, we want to help you build your business and work with the entrepreneur only. This is about marriage, and it's about parenting, and it's about legacy, purpose, and protecting assets. And this is about building a business that runs without us, or our families never have to. And all of those things can kind of get wrapped up, obviously, in our coaching all year long. But we do this one event, which is just so powerful, called the Family Mastermind. And the kids get together, and we're doing workshops and teaching them how to think like entrepreneurs and launch their first business. And of course, the adults were teaching on all the topics I just mentioned. But and then it's like a vacation with other entrepreneur families who are crazy and intense, and all the things that we just reluctant, all the things we've talked about here today. And it's just such a unique environment. So yeah, that I would say that's like the culmination of, yes, kings, queens, but really it's the whole family.
For high-performing entrepreneurs listening or watching right now, what's the most common mistake you see when it comes to chasing growth that they make?
Oh, goodness. There's so many.
Limited to about 8,000.
Yeah. Okay, common mistake chasing growth. I think it's probably ego. And ego is attached to things that don't really matter but look good to other people. And so you think because you've got a big revenue number, or because you spoke on some certain stage or something like that you've made it, if you will. So that's equivalent to growth, but really it's just your ego. Ego also keeps you away from the family also, because it's self-serving. And not that that's a bad thing. I think that there's a healthy way to have ego. But the ego, when negative or only self-serving, is when we get in trouble. So that's what I would say. We chase the things that don't actually matter.
Yeah, I we spoke earlier about, the so-called attributes that, I brought to the table when I started my business, and ego was, right up there. And I have a complicated relationship with my ego. I'm grateful for my ego because it allowed me to do something I would not have thought I could have done.
For sure.
It was my bodyguard. It was my coach, right? And it was my propeller, and it was my anchor. And at some point, the ability to propel me forward was passed by the dragging effect of an anchor. And I started making very ego-based decisions, which were not the best for the company, but they made me feel good in the moment. And none of them, with perspective and altitude, time, none of them mattered. And I'm sure I could have gotten to wherever I am today much quicker if I had, like going through the transmission, a manual transmission car. First gear is a lot of ego. Second gear is ego's there, a little less. Eventually you get to overdrive and you're just cruising, and there's no place for ego. So I've managed over, I'm 65 years old, and it has taken the majority of my life to get to this point. But I've managed to put my ego in a dungeon, and I have the key. And every once in a while, Chaz, to be perfectly candid, every once in a while, I'll take my ego out and hey, let me show you what I've done, and it makes me feel good. But then I say, okay, little buddy, time to go back into your dungeon. And you can't play with others. You cannot be here when anyone else is in the room, because I make terrible ego-driven decisions.
That's right.
But I think it has a place, a time and a place, and a purpose and a benefit. But unchecked, you mentioned earlier, the things that get you from A to B fail you from B to C. And we tend to think that if we just keep doing what worked, it will continue working, and that is not true at all. And ego is part of that. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's outwardly successful, but privately feels like things are out of control? It's too costly to be that successful.
Yeah, I would say that they should get around other people that that they can share those things with, because every entrepreneur probably has felt that. And here's what I mean: but when you get into a community, or go to an event, or even just on a podcast like this, talking to great people, you realize that the hardship or the challenge or even the successes, because I've talked to so many entrepreneurs that are just like, I can't even share my successes with my neighbor, church friends, whatever, because they don't even get that, and somehow look, greedy or whatever. And so to be able to share all of those things around our lives and how they're so different with other entrepreneurs, and for you to then recognize like, oh, this is just normal. It just resets the table every single time. Even if someone's listening right now and they go, oh yeah, no, he's right, that is good. Getting in another environment where you realize that not only can I borrow courage and I get inspired to be pulled forward by someone else, but I can take a look at this individual and I can go, okay, yeah, if he can deal with that, if that's normal for this thing we call entrepreneurship, then my little problems over here, I'll have no problems with. And it resets the table of what's normal and what I'm capable of. So that, I guess that'd be my kind of half-witted answer.
It's a full-witted answer. That's good. That's a good answer. If you could go back and speak to 24-year-old Chaz,
Yeah.
what warning or reassurance would you give young Chaz?
Oh, I just put my hand on his shoulder and be like, hey, it's all going to work out pretty good. And it goes back to the transfer of courage we talked about earlier. I regularly chat with, the 10-year senior Chaz. I just turned 39, and so I haven't talked with the 49-year-old Chaz. I just turned 39 the other day. I've talked with the 48-year-old Chaz a couple times, and I haven't talked to the 49-year-old this year, so I need to talk to the 49-year-old Chaz. But in those conversations, that's what the older version of me often does. He just, in a very poised, calm, postured authority way, just sits down and goes, man, isn't it fun? Aren't you having a blast? Oh, you're tight, you're worried, you're stressed. Just don't worry. Like it's all going to work out just fine. So
Yeah,
that's what I would tell my younger version as well.
yes, certainly. History has proven to me worry doesn't solve problems. It extends them, right? Because
Yep.
you're not productive. In fact, when I'm worried, I tend to make fear-based decisions, and they are very short-term. They are basically, putting out a fire. And in my company, I was an arsonist. I was starting fires, and then I was also a firefighter. I was putting out all the fires I started, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was me the whole time.
Yep.
And it takes a little bit of, certainly no ego to realize that. Like, I'm the problem. I kept trying to solve the problem externally, and the problem 100% was internally. And, sure, there's external things that are out there, but 99% of the problems were me. For someone trying to build a meaningful business without regret, as you have now, what's the one question they should be asking themselves today?
What do I want? And that's the question that any entrepreneur should be asking themselves. What is it that I really want? Once you have that clear and written down, ideally, then it's just about greater or lesser desire. If I want to have a whatever business and 17 children, or I want to have a $14 million business and an organization that volunteers and helps whatever, like whatever you want, it doesn't matter. As long as it's clear, then you can determine, do I have enough desire to go get it? And then it's just greater or lesser desire. How bad do you want it? But as long as it's clear, you can figure out what it takes to get there. Well, that's what we do as entrepreneurs. We figure it out, right?
Yeah, we MacGyver our way out of everything. And for those very young people who are watching or listening, well, what's he talking about, MacGyver? It's a 80s TV show about a guy that just figures out how to get out of tough situations. Last question, because we're about out of time. How did you define success at 24, when you first started when you bought your first franchise, and how do you define it today?
Yeah, I probably defined it as, financially free. I wasn't financially free at that point, or financially independent, maybe, as some would say. And so I think what success, first off, we all get to determine our own definition of success. And so that's what the mature Chaz, my definition of success might be a little different now than at 24. But the beauty of it is that I get to determine what that is. I get to determine what success looks like. It goes back to what we were just talking about as far as what do I want, and then am I willing to go after it or not? Success for me now is, am I reaching for my potential? Am I living up to who God made me to be? And that's in all areas of my life. Am I intentional today about pushing forward my business, my marriage, my kids, my health, my faith, helping others, serving? Am I a representation of my faith to others and how I love and serve? And then what did I do today to be intentional about that? That's the grade for me. Was I successful today? Did I win today? I've got a shirt that says winning is contagious. And I love to win. And I think that the contagious part about that is that I have just found ways to constantly win. Even if it was just the simple fact that I got up when I said I was going to. I did my quiet time like I said I wanted to. I fed my mind in the way that I wanted to. I served my family and my businesses the way that I wanted to. I served my community in a way that I wanted to. Great. I pushed the needle. Tomorrow I get to do it again.
Excellent. For my viewers or listeners that would like to get more information on gathering the kings or queens, I'll have that information in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, just look down here where it says see more, and information on how to get a hold of Chaz through his company, Gathering the Kings, will be there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, look at the show notes on your favorite podcast app, and that information will be there. Chaz, thank you so much for being my guest. I would say good luck, but you're way past that. I would just say continued success to you in Gathering the Kings. And I think your mission is more than just trying to make a buck. Way, way more. It's a purpose-driven business. I can tell that, and it's obvious. And I think your effort is going to make the Bureau of Labor Statistics 80-20 have to be reevaluated at some point. So thanks for doing what you do. Keep up the great work. And thanks for being my guest and educating me and my audience, more importantly.
Thanks, Mike. It's truly an honor, and right back at you. You're doing some awesome stuff here with the podcast, and so we just appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, we're part of the Mutual Admiration Society. How's that?
That's right.
Take care. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. Most entrepreneurs never burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they are capable, driven, and unwilling to quit. The very traits that create success can quietly create the conditions for collapse if they go unchecked. What I really appreciate about this conversation with Chaz is that it reminds us that success is not just about what you build, but about what you are willing to protect along the way. If your business requires you to sacrifice your health, your family, or your sense of identity just to keep growing, that's not a win, it's a warning. The real work of entrepreneurship is not proving how much you can endure. It's learning how to build something that serves your life instead of consuming it. If today's episode caused you to pause and reflect, that's a good thing. Those moments of reflection often arrive before meaningful change. If you found value in this conversation, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it or see it. Well, now that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Reluctant Entrepreneur. A very special thanks to Chaz Wolfe for being my guest on the show. You can find the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast on all major podcast platforms and on our YouTube channel. We've been exceptionally busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, consider giving us a like and subscribe. Those two simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. You can also reach me directly at mike@reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com. And of course, a really quick shameless plug. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available both as a paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on Audible and Amazon. Well, that's it for me. I'm out of time. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable. I'll see you again soon.